Okay, let's go for the discussion of that the language of paradox, which we left in the midst in our last class, which is written by Cleanth. Okay, so what we explained in the last class that the idea that poetry often uses paradox, and paradox means there is a contrast, but both are indicating to the true meaning of it, isn't it? Even though many people might find that surprising that how poetry is indicating as a paradox. But if you talk about the paradox, paradox is when something seems contradictory or opposite to each other, but still makes sense, isn't it? People tend to think of paradoxes as clever tricks, as far as we read in that book, that used in witty or humorous writing, like in the works of writers such as G.K. Crestron, right, one of the writer, or in satire with epigrams, satire with criticism with short, clever poems, and these forms of writing are considered more knowledgeable and not deeply emotional. So people are hesitant to seek paradox as a part of a serious poetry, right? However, if you look at that book, the text, the book called the Language of Paradox, the text argues that what paradox is actually an essential body, right, or essential tool in poetry. Uh, because poets often express deeper truths, right? Deeper truths that can only be understood through paradoxes and ideas that might not appear logical at first, but reveal a greater meaning upon reflection. On the other hand, if you talk about that, beside poets, right, scientists also need to use the language, and that is straightforward and clear. If you talk about the comparison, so you find out that scientists they use language that is straightforward and clear, right, without paradox, because they deal with the facts, right. So the author in this particular text uses William Wordsworth as an example. So we all know that Wordsworth's poetry appears very simple and direct, without making any kind of tricks or complex ideas. But even his work contains paradoxes. If you talk about William Wordsworth, for example, in his poem about a peaceful evening, right? The poet feels what a sense of worship. Worship, you understand that something called as you devote yourself. Uh, while a girl walking with him doesn't. The paradox is that even though it's not consciously worshipping, right? Consciously worshipping the peaceful living, right? Our existence and connection to nature that may suggest a form of what? Silent worship, right? Now that's why if you talk about that, poetry often communicates what? Truths, right? And truth through what? The truth through paradoxes. Please do remember. Even if it seems what? Unexpected. Now, even the text further discusses the use of paradox in William Wordsworth's poetry and explains how it adds deeper meaning and the depth of feelings, even if people are not consciously aware of it. The specific poem being referred is about a peaceful evening, isn't it? Where the poet feels a sense of worship while a girl walking beside him doesn't appear to be worshipping. However, the paradox here is that the girl, through her innocence and conscious connection to nature, is actually worshipping more deeply than the poet, even though she is not deeply aware of it. Right? The idea is that the girl's connection to nature is continuous and pure. So, while the poet's sense of worship is more conscious and attentive. Now, understand the girl's Then the connection to nature is what? Continuous and pure, while the poet's sense of worship is considered as the more connection more conscious and occasional, not always. This contrast creates nothing but a paradox, right? The girl, those appear or seemingly less involved, right, is in a constant communion with the nature. Communion with nature means communication with nature, right? While the poet's connection is nothing but a fleeting. Fleeting means called as a passing very quickly. What's comparison of the evening to run or called as a what's the comparison of the evening to a girl, right, or to a nun, you can say that. To a nun adds another layer of the paradox. Like when we talk about a peaceful evening, here we find out the comparison between the poet and the girl, right, innocent girl. So second is called as a comparison of that peaceful evening to a nun, right? So that adds another layer to this paradox. The evening's calmness represents nothing but a visible, right? So and outward worship, like the external sign of a nun's devotion. But the girl's unconscious innocence, which symbolizes what? Means the girl's deeper hidden worship, right? Deeper innocence or hidden worship, right? That stands in contrast to this outward form of worship. So the text also mentions another of Wordsworth's poem that called as a common upon Westminster Bridge. Right. What is that? That called as a composed upon Westminster's Bridge. When we talk about this particular poem of William Wordsworth, that presents a majestic image of the city in the morning, right? Majestic image of the city in the morning. The paradox here is that something as ordinary as a city can influence such a huge feelings. An ordinary city can also create nothing but a profound feelings, right? So, which is why the poem is so successful, even if it is hard for students to explain why that success. In essence, the text is highlighting what how paradox in poetry allows for what multiple layers of meaning and also understanding, right? So paradox. So even if those layers are not immediately, then you can say that obvious, right? So obvious. So after that, the author explains how what's a surname, right? So composed upon Westminster Bridge, hold power despite his simple language and lack of clear details or vivid details. The poem describes the city of London in the morning, portraying is an unexpected beauty and peace. And there is a little specific imagery, which is a poetic device, just a general sense of the city's roof, city's roofs, pinnacles, and fields that glowing in the morning light. But the poem that makes understandably deeply. The strength of the poem lies in the what? Lies in the, you can say, paradox that arises, right? What is that? London, a busy, man-made city, typically filled with the smoke and the noise, and it is suddenly changed into something natural and also calm, serene, much like mountains or rivers. Now you find out that mountains or rivers, right? And it means the scenery of London, right? It's comparing with the scenery of mountains or river, right? The speaker is genuinely surprised by this beauty. Normally, only natural landmarks like mountains are thought to where the beauty of the morning, where the beauty of the morning. But here, a bustling means called as a crowded industrial city like London does as well, right? So, and that creates nothing but again contrast, right? So, the city not typically associated with the nature, right? Taking on natural beauty. So, not specifically as connected with the nature. At the same time, it is talking about natural beauty, right? It gives the poem its emotional depth. The poet did not previously see London. William Wordsworth did not see London as part of nature. But in the moment, the city is a bit hit by the same sunlight that's shining in the early morning or in the evening, mountains and rivers. So these are the things revealing nothing but London's natural side. Right. So in the end, even the author stated about whom? River Thames. Right? River Thames that usually, constrained by man-made structures. Constrained by man-made structure means the way man has decorated the place. So River Thames also flow into that way. Right. So that shows nothing but a man-made structures. And that appears natural and free like a mountain brook, right? Mountain brook means what? How the water flows from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain, right? And that's occurred because of the way the brook has created its way, isn't it? So the point, even when it's called as a, what do we say that? The point, even to talk about Westminster Bridge, concludes with what? Concludes by celebrating this surprising beauty and showing that what? How even a city can be seen as part of a natural world, isn't it? So, and that's what is the comparison that the poet has made in such a way. It is very simple to understand the Westminster Bridge, right? So, but at the same time, the deeper meaning present into it is called as a means how that Westminster Bridge is compared with the beauty of the nature, right? So even the text explains how William Wordsworth, in his poem composed upon Westminster Bridge, changes common everyday scenes into something extraordinary and also filled with what life. Even when discussing something as a mechanical and lifeless as a city, the poet describes that what a city as a sleep. A sleep means what? There's something called as a that revitalizes the metaphor. Revitalizes means what? Re-energizes the means, metaphor. It seems like what peace is present. So the house is typically seen as a dead and inanimate. Now you find out the poet describes what? City asleep, right? So that indicates energy. Second is called as the houses that typically seen as the dead and inanimate, now appearing as what? Living entities, right? So, and participating in the natural world. So, what are the things present in the natural world or participating in the natural world? You would find out the city, the houses, right? And this shift in goal is a part of a broader paradox, right? This nothing but a perspective is a part of a broader paradox. How something is a mechanical, like a city, can be seen as organic and alive, right? City is seen as a what? Organic and you can say that alive. So William Wordsworth's purpose, what is the purpose? If you see that it is stated in a preface to lyrical ballads. Now we talk about that three of the points of him, right? One is called as a peaceful haven. Second is called as it's composed of minister. What is that? Bridge, right or no? So, and the third one we talk about that's known as a lyrical ballads, right? In that case, composed upon Westminster Bridge and a peaceful haven and a lyrical ballad. So these are nothing but the kind of you can say that writing that indicates nothing but the paradoxes. But if you talk about lyrical ballads, that was to take incidents from everyday life, right? If you talk about lyrical ballads, that was to take everyday life and present them in an unusual, almost you can say that supernatural light. Supernatural means what? Something which is more powerful and also something which is called as a miraculous light, isn't it? Here, and the poet's goal was to what? Awaken people's minds, right? So people's minds and show that the ordinary is actually extraordinary, isn't it? So, and beside Williams Wordsworth, you also talk about S.T. Coleridge. S.T. Coleridge is Samuel Taylor Coleridge, isn't it? So S.T. Coleridge, who is a fellow poet, later explained in that composed called as a lyric, preface to lyrical ballad, right? A fellow poet later explained that William Wordsworth means main aimed to what? Now bring the charm of nobility. Bring the what? Charm of nobility. Nobility means something new, right or not? So, and the charm to nobility in everyday things, reminding readers to the beauty and wonder around them that may have, sometimes people and sometimes readers ignore or called as sometimes readers unable to read that. So Wordsworth wanted to what reveal the poetic and remarkable qualities in the mundane helping people to see that what seems common or uninteresting at the first look, at first glance, can be full of life and wonder, can be full of life and surprise. This idea reflects what the romantic poet's interest, right? Romantic poets' interest in surprising their audience and making the familiar world feel what now new and exciting, right? New and exciting. Even in the further part, the poet discusses or revolves around the use of paradox and irony in poetry. Paradox and irony. Now both are appearing like what the same time, right? But paradox is called as a two contrasting ideas which may be true, whereas irony is called as so one idea which have a two different understanding, right? So, particularly in the works of Alexander Pope. So, who are the authors or who are the writers or poets about whom we discussed? William Wordsworth, second is called the S.T. Coleridge, and third, which we are going to discuss, Alexander Pope. So, if you talk about that in the works of Alexander Pope and the romantic poets like William Wordsworth, and you talk about William Black, right? William Black. The focus is on how these poets utilize language. Why they utilize the language and where they utilize the language. They utilize language to express deeper meanings and also make the audience awaken, right? And also feel perceptions or present some kind of a perception. So if you talk about that, the main points, right? So the first one is called the paradoxes and irony in Alexander Pope's work, right? So as we started discussion about Alexander Pope, so what do we find out? The lines from Pope's, right? Pope's written one of the writing called an essay on man, right? That present an essay on man presents nothing but a stark view, right? Stark view of what? The human existence, right? It highlights the contradiction of life. It highlights what? The contradiction of life, the struggle between mind and body, and mind and body, the inherent flaws of humanity, right? Inherent flaws means of humanity. It indicates that what struggle between mind and body and the inherent flaws. Flaws means mistakes that the human being do, right? So the line like what? Burn but to die and erring but to err. Burn but to die, but erring but to err, right? So, and erring but to err. Err means called as an error, right? So, Pope's approach leans or called as a takes more towards irony rather than what? Rather than wonder, and emphasizing what? The human conditions, absurdity. So, human have been considered nothing but a ridiculous, absurd, right? So he reflects on the uncertainty of knowledge. Uncertainty means what? Something which is not sure, unsure of knowledge, and the limitation of a human region, right? So At the same time, if you talk about the next, which is called the contrast with the Wordsworth, right? What's point? Wordsworth's poem often influence our sense of wonder, right? And presenting nothing but the mundane in a light that highlights its beauty and importance. The paradox or the contrast means William Wordsworth's sonnet reveals both the organic life of the city and the poet's struggle to, reconcile its mechanical aspect with its vitality, right? Or with its energy. Despite the different tones means what Alexander Pope and William Wordsworth, both poets, right, invite the readers. Why? That to see themselves a new light, right? Wordsworth focuses on wonder, while Pope emphasizes irony, right? One is wonder and the other one is irony. And those are showcasing how both elements can coexist in poetry. So, what are the two elements you would find out? Irony and wonder. So, coexist in poetry. Now, similar to that, if you talk about that Alexander Pope and William Wordsworth, similar to that, you also find out William Black and Coleridge, S.T. Coleridge. Like the merging of wonder and irony, right? So it's also evident in the works of other poets like William Black and Coleridge, right? So, for example, Black's written poem often contain both the elements. Both the element means wonder and irony, reflecting the nothing but the difficulties, complexities of human experiences, right? So, Coleridge, at the same time, S.T. Coleridge written poem called "The Rime of the Ancient Mariner," right? So that similarly combines wonder with a deeper philosophical question, right? And presenting nothing but a multifaceted nature of a poetic language. Multifaceted means what? Means a variety of face, variety of ideas, right? Of book, a variety of ideas of nature of poetic language, right? So even the poet, even the author stated about the role of language, right? So we talk about Alexander Pope and William Wordsworth, we talk about William Black and S.T. Coleridge, and the contrast of what means paradox and the uses of what? The uses of the wonder and irony. The uses of what? Paradoxes and irony. So at the end, you would find out the role of language. So they use, but what is the role of the language? Now, the nature of poetic language or poem inherently involves paradoxes. Inherently means what? Now, while started writing from the beginning or from the beginning of the day, it introduces nothing but a paradox, right? Where connotation, contextual, drawing the meaning, the association and emotion linked to words, right? If you talk about that, means the role of language is nothing but included with the paradoxes. It is the reader whose association and emotion connected to the words, and these language play a crucial role alongside denotation. Denotation means what? Actual meaning that you find out from the dictionary, right? The poet's language is not merely a vehicle. Vehicle for what? Vehicle for straightforward expression. It's not about that the poet has written certain things. The poet has written certain things using with certain languages that only a vehicle of straightforward expression. No, it is rich with the layers of meaning. So language has nothing but anyone's language has nothing but a rich layers meaning that challenge readers to think beyond surface interpretation. So it means what? You have written something, I read that, and I means interpret in a different manner, isn't it? So all total, if you talk about that, the text means focuses the idea that poets like Alexander Pope, S.T. Coleridge, William Wordsworth, William Black, right? So utilize paradox and irony to engage what? Engage readers in a deeper exploration of life, right? So, and prompting them to do what? Prompting them to reconsider their perception, right? Perception means their thoughts, their ideas. By blending or by mixing these elements, which elements? Wonder, irony, paradox, right? So mixing these elements with their language. So they actually introduce everyday experiences into huge reflections on the human condition. This mixed of language, right? So, and also you can say interplay between language, so and meaning that are essential to understanding poetry's power and poetry's complexity. Complexity means difficulty, right? So again, the poet also stated about the or highlighting how poet manipulates. Manipulates means to play a kind of a uh, trick with the words and meaning to express deeper emotions and ideas. And if you talk about that, we talk about the role of language. At the same time, the next is called the fluidity of poetic language, right? The poet's language is a dynamic, remarkable, and allowing for what? Continual modification and also reconfiguration of words, right? So take the example of H.T. Coleridge, right? Or you talk about Thomas Stewart Eliot, right? So who points out that poetry involves a what? A perpetual site alteration of language. Perpetual means something that continual slight change of language, right? So where words are nothing but an unexpected weight. Words are unexpected weight, not like scientific language, because scientific languages are facts, right? So it is also stated that it seeks to stabilize and define the terms strictly. Poetry defines the terms in a very strict manner. Poetry thrives on disruption and ambiguity, right? If you talk about scientific language, so they stabilize and also limited to the what? Limited to the terms strictly. So whereas a poetry that explode on disruption, they are called as disturbing, and also ambiguity, confusion, right? Where meaning change and also meaning shift from one to the other, right? So let's take the example from Wordsworth. When you talk about William Wordsworth, you would find out when Wordsworth's evening sonnet, Wordsworth's evening sonnet that describe how adjectives like beauteous, isn't it? Beauteous. Now, generally we say that beautiful and courageous. Beautiful, courageous. But here, when he mentioned beauteous, calm, and breathless, they can coexist in a description of the evening, right? They can coexist in the description of the evening. So where you say that nature is a beauteous, nature is a calm, nature is a breathless, isn't it? So, and this mix creates a complex image, right? That suggests both what tranquility, both tranquility means calmness, and you can say that excitement, right? The juxtaposition of calm and breathless that indicates poetry can embody or represent multiple, sometimes also contrast emotions at the same time. This complexity or this difficulty focus or weakens the richness of poetic expression. So even somebody who likes reading poetry, when he or she finds out the complexity present in the poems, so that deters or called as uh, degrade the feelings of an individual, right? So even not only that, we are talking about the examples of William Wordsworth, and that helps us that how language impact on the poetry. So next is called as the uses of metaphor and analogy. Metaphor is called as a direct comparison. Analogy is called as a comparison between one thing with the other, right? So the point often depends on metaphor. Why? The point often depends upon metaphor to to articulate or to present, right, small information, or you can say that small emotion, subtle emotion, right? As if you find out somebody like IA Richards, IA Richards. Now, who is he? Now, one of the again another point. So, who since emotional experience, who said that what emotional experience can be intricate and layered. Emotional experience can be intricate and layered. Metaphors serve as what? Essential tools for expressing these states. Right. What does metaphor do? The metaphors do nothing but what? Create an emotional experience one after another layer. Right. So, however, metaphors do not fit together neatly. They exist in a landscape of overlapping meanings and contradiction. Overlapping means it tells nothing but two or three meanings simultaneously, right? So and also creating contradiction that creates nothing but a what? An example of interpretation. Example of interpretation. So this is nothing but called as a metaphor and analogy. Then the next four is called as a paradox of as a poetic device. When we talk about paradox as a poetic device, the author emphasizes that even straightforward poets frequently engage with a what? Engage with a paradox. Like sometimes you say that the person is very innocent, right? At the same time, the inner part present in the human being is something called the love notorious. Likewise, when we talk about the author emphasizes that even some people are straightforwardness, at the same time, most of the time engage in a paradoxes, contrast with their own, own straightforward information. So these contradictions and the minute details are very important for capturing the difficulties of human experiences, isn't it? The poet's challenge lies in where navigating these tensions. These tensions means what? One side you are straightforward, the other side you hide the paradox and wonder as well as the irony, right? So capturing nothing but the difficulties of human experience. The poet's challenge lies in what? Directing these tensions while decorating a coherent or continuous and impactful piece. Then the fifth one is called as a success through indirection. Right. Success through indirection. When you talk about the text concludes by suggesting that while the poet's task is what? Fraught with the challenges, filled with the challenges. It does not preclude. It doesn't preclude what? It doesn't preclude success, right? By employing indirect methods, poets can arrive at a clear meaning and emotional truths, right? So let's take the example of William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare's metaphor of lawn bowls implies that through subtle lawns bowl LAWNS. Lawns is referring to the grassy land and the bowl, right? Lawns bowls implies that through subtle or indirect approaches, poets can find clarity and direction. So you can say that something which is indirectly represented indicated nothing but a poet's clarity and direction, even in complex emotional landscape. Landscape means picture. So all total, if you talk about that, the text emphasizes the inherent challenges. Inherent means inside challenges of poetic languages and the sophisticated techniques poets employ to express layered meanings and emotions. Right. So by engaging with the paradoxes, analogy, metaphor, isn't it? Paradoxes, analogy, and metaphor, poets create nothing but a rich example that understands readers, right? So the fluidity of language in poetry stands what? Stands against the rigidity of scientific terminology, right? As far as we started the topic, we understood that how science is different from the poems, right? So at the same time, we also find out science is contrast with the poetry, right? So allowing for a deeper exploration of the human condition and the difficulties of life. Ultimately, the poet's ability is what? The poet's ability is to direct or guide these details in what makes their work both challenging and also profoundly or hugely rewarding, right? We'll keep till this. Huh? Next points we will discuss about arts versus science, paradox as a poetic tool, and we'll also take John example of John and misunderstanding of paradox. So beside that, also we talk about complexity of poetic interpretation, isn't it? So those of the things will be taught to you in the next class. Clear? That's all for the day.